Most of you watching this right now are watching on a smartphone or a laptop or a tablet. And perhaps as you're sitting there at your desk in your chair, you're enjoying a can or bottle of your favorite beverage and eating a snack. And you may find yourself wondering, what does this device, this drink, this snack, and even this chair that I'm sitting in, what do all of these things have in common? And the answer to that question is that all of these things have gotten to you by way of a forklift. Now, I've been operating forklifts for over a decade now. And I'm not only a forklift operator, I'm also a forklift instructor. And I teach people how to operate forklifts. So today, I would like to explain to you and inform you exactly what a forklift is and where forklifts came from. Give you a brief history of how we got this amazing machine we have today. And then finally, I would like to tell you what you have to do if you find yourself wanting to operate one of those machines. So let's begin by looking at what a forklift is. Now, when I say forklift, I am referring to a counterbalanced sit-down forklift. And most people are. They're referring to this machine that you can sit on or stand in some cases. And forks are protruding. They may be poles or they may be actual forks. And you can lift the load and you can move it. And that's what I mean by forklift. But the Department of Labor defines forklifts as a powered industrial truck. And OSHA also has these powered industrial trucks divided into 7 different classifications. And while I won't get into these classifications, I'll just explain to you briefly that these 7 different classifications have came from different types of forklifts that may be indoor versus outdoor, gas versus electric, and etc. And the one exception on this list that does not fit at all is an electric walk-behind pallet jack. And the reason why this is on the list is because it does have the mechanical hydraulic lifting function and the wheels do actually drive. You just have to walk behind it and you can move a load. So how did we get from using buggies and horses and the backs of laborers to carry things to having these 7 different classifications of forklifts? Well, unfortunately, no one has wrote a book on the history of forklifts. I tried. I looked. Maybe it's something I'll work on in the future, but for now it does not exist. The best that I could find was different sources and different pieces and parts of the history here, but a company called McCall Handling, who does sales and lease and service of forklifts and fork devices, does have a section on their website about the history of forklifts. And from what I've gathered in researching this topic, it is the best one-stop place that you can find for a general overview of the history of forklifts. And the origins of the forklift began late in the 19th century, and some people can trace it back even later to that, at thousands of years as mobility has increased with our ability to carry different types of loads as technology has increased. But for what I'm talking about, these modern forklifts, the first patent for any type of device like this ever came around in 1867. However, at the time, technology did not exist to be able to build this machine, and we did not begin seeing forklifts until into the 19th century. But coming up before this, we were beginning to see rail cars with chain winches that could lift the load, move it back and forth. The paper industry had some type of rail buggy, or it was a buggy that could lift something and move it and then drop it. But for what we consider a forklift, the first one is actually attributed to Clark. And this is before Clark began operation of forklifts. Obviously, forklifts didn't exist at the time. But Clark invented this machine to move things internally in their manufacturing process where they manufactured drive axles. And as people began touring this facility and seeing this machine, they were like, what do we got to do to get you to build us one of those? So Clark began doing it, and now even here we are 100 years later, and Clark is still going strong making forklifts. However, the first modern forklift, that invention has been attributed to Yale. And in 1923, Yale produced a model that was able to lift a load hydraulically over the level of the cab, and it had the mobility that we now all associate with forklift, and most people consider this to be the first modern forklift. As time continued on, every decade it seems like a new feature or a new technology has came about for these forklifts. We've gone from just having simple forks and a tractor to ride on, to having masts that guard the load on the forks from falling back on the driver, to driver protection cages, to seat belts, to some of the newer ones I have in my warehouse now have electric stabilization technology where it'll move the counterbalance and it keeps from tipping. And there's all kinds of different technologies out there for forklifts. I have even seen them with iPhone chargers. So forklifts have gone from this clunky, loud, and hard to operate machine to the streamlined engineering marvel that we have today. So you may find yourself asking, what do I got to do to get in on that action? Well, the good news is it's not as hard as most people think. And there is a common misconception with the licensing process for forklifts. Most people seem to think that there is a government, either state or federal licensing procedure for forklifts. However, this is simply not true. If you go to the website of the Department of Labor and look at forklift training and certification, you'll see that this responsibility is left in the hands of the employer. So an employer can bring an employee in and they can train them on a forklift, and there are requirements. OSHA requires that there is class training and practical training. You do have, in most cases, you have to watch a video or read a pamphlet and answer questions about certain things on forklifts, because things are different. You have to know what lever operates what, that they steer with the rear tire. There's a few things that you need to learn, but it's nothing overly exhaustive. And then from there, the most important part, if you ask anybody in the industry, is the hands-on training. And this is where you learn the most at. And an employer is allowed to get someone out and teach them the basics and let them move around, and then from there they can decide, is this going to be a provisional type of license where we have someone with them for a couple weeks, or is this going to be a full-on license where we just let them go? But that is the only licensing procedure that is required for forklifts. Now, if you find yourself wanting to get in this industry, either warehousing or logistics, or perhaps a material handler at a manufacturing facility, or a dock worker at a furniture factory, there's many places that forklift certification is required, and you may be wondering, well, how do I get a forklift certification if employers train, but employers won't train or hire anyone without forklift certification? And there is an answer to that too, and it's not as complicated as most people think. A lot of forklift service providers offer forklift training. There in the Triad area, there is ACT, and Crown also offers. But our school, GTCC, offers a forklift training program. And essentially that's all you need to get started. You can go in and do your class training and get some practical training, and then from there you're a forklift driver. You just need practice. Practice makes perfect, and most times if you need to take your time and learn, 99% of employers will allow for that, because nobody wants anyone to make a mistake. Now, as I'm sure you can tell, I absolutely love forklifts, and I could go on forever and ever and ever and ever, but I really shouldn't. So I hope that this speech has been able to achieve its purpose, and hopefully now you know exactly what a forklift is, and you know where forklifts have came from early in the 19th century. Crude models came around to these amazing machines that we have now. And also, if this has piqued your interest and you find yourself wanting to operate a forklift, then now you know at least the right direction to go in to achieve this. Forklifts keep the world moving, and there's always an opening for a good operator. So maybe one day you'll join us.